Just in, after the president used a racial slur describing the coronavirus, calling it Kung Flu. That's a quote. That's his quote at his rally in Tulsa. The White House not only defending it moments ago at the briefing, but essentially defending the use of racial slurs.
Of my own. Last July, President Trump declared himself the least racist person there is anywhere in the world. Why does he use racist phrases like the Kung Flu?
The president doesn't. What the president does do is point to the fact that the origin of the virus is China. It's a fair thing to point out as China tries to ridiculously rewrite history, ridiculously blame the coronavirus on American soldiers. This is what China's trying to do. And what President Trump is saying, no, China, I will label this virus for its place of origin.
That's what he's saying by using the racist phrase Kung Flu?
He is linking it to its place of origin.
What does he have to say to Asian Americans who are deeply offended and worried that his use will lead to further attacks of discrimination?
So the president has said very clearly it's important that we totally protect our Asian community in the U.S. and all around the world. They're amazing people, and the spreading of the virus is not their fault in any way, shape, or form. They're working closely with us to get rid of it. We will prevail together. It's very important. So it's not a discussion about Asian Americans, who the president values and prizes as citizens of this great country. It is an indictment of China for letting this virus get here. And I would also point out that the media blames President Trump for using the terms China virus and Wuhan virus when they themselves have used these very terms. The New York Times called it the Chinese coronavirus, Reuters the Chinese virus, CNN the Chinese coronavirus on January 20th, Washington Post January 21st, Chinese coronavirus, and I have more than a dozen other examples.
Separate category, Kayleigh. Kung Flu is extremely offensive to many people in the Asian American community. To be clear, are you saying the White House does not believe it is racist?
To be clear, I think the media is trying to play games with the terminology of this virus, where the focus should be on the fact that China let this out of their country. The same phrase that the media roundly now condemns has been used by the media. I can go more examples. Wuhan virus, CNN said on January 22nd, and we can go on and on and on. So while the media wants to focus on nomenclature, the president's going to focus on action. Yes.
Has never called it the Kung Flu. Calling it the Chinese coronavirus and calling it the Kung Flu are very different things.
The media and your network specifically
called it the Kung Flu.
The media and your network specifically have repeatedly used the term China virus and Wuhan virus, and then gone on to deride the president as somehow using a term that they themselves have never used. So we can go through CNN's history.
Kayleigh.
I'd be more than happy to go through CNN's history. On February 9th, you guys talked about the Wuhan coronavirus. On January 23rd, you guys talked about the Wuhan coronavirus. On January 22nd, the Wuhan virus. I can write it all out for you and detail it for you in an email.
Kayleigh,
yes,
you've got
Justin.
to admit that. It is not the same thing as calling it the Kung Flu.
All right, we have to point this out, right? Let's be clear here. Calling the coronavirus the Kung Flu is racist. The president made this racist remark, and Kayleigh McEnany is outright defending it from the White House podium, and she knows what she's doing, right? Back in 2015, before she supported the president, she talked about his racist comments about Mexicans. So she knows exactly what she's doing. I want to bring in Caitlin Collins, April Ryan, Jamie Gangel. Caitlin, to you first. This is, we always say this, right? It's hard to be surprised by something. I think what was so, noticeable there was just her repeated defense of a racist term. It was like watching someone over and over again say something that we know based on her past comments. She'll say anything. What did you think about this?
Well, the thing is, the argument the White House is making is that because media outlets back in January and other months referred to it as the Chinese coronavirus or the Wuhan virus, I think that was even before the WHO, the World Health Organization, had given it a name. That means it's okay for the president to call it Kung Flu, as he did on Saturday night. Those are not the same things. A media outlet calling it the Chinese coronavirus is not the same as the president using this term that civil liberties outlets have said is going to help, it's going to inspire racism racism against Asian American people. Calling it the Kung flu is not a medical term. No legitimate news outlet has used that phrase. So that argument does not even make sense. Those are not the same thing, and that was the White House's only defense of the president using that phrase on Saturday night. And as Yamiche from PBS pointed out in the room, Kellyanne Conway, when asked about a White House official using the phrase Kung flu several months ago, said she believed that term was highly offensive. So there is a recognition inside the White House about what that term means, what it implies, what potential it has, and it was not the same as what Kayleigh McEnany was trying to say there, a tactic that she has used many times in these briefings, trying to say, well, the media has done this and it's being hypocritical. Calling it the Chinese coronavirus is just not simply the same thing, and it's not really a viable argument, but that was the argument that the White House used as it stood by and said the president doesn't regret using that term on Saturday night.
Yeah, and April Ryan, this is the shift we've seen where you've had it, this term used on background, right, from a White House source, and then you have a Kellyanne Conway saying that it is wrong and that it is offensive, and now the difference is you have Kayleigh McEnany from the White House podium saying this is perfectly fine, this is not racist. I mean, this is a change. This is a change that we're seeing here, and it's incredible.
You know, Brianna, I don't necessarily call it a change. It has been floating through the White House, and now it's being justified. The president has now said it. And if they're making these statements, it's not just a racist statement. It's about the heart. Is this the heart of the president? Is he a racist to say this? I asked him this question early on in his presidency. It took him 3 days to answer. And if this is, as Kayleigh wants to say, about the origins of this deadly virus, call it out for the origins, where it came from. Why add all of this extra racial overtone? It not only causes a problem with the Asian Americans, but it also causes a problem with our neighbors in Asia, the people we have to work on finances, on human rights issues, on diplomacy, on so many other levels. This is not just about a racist statement inside this nation. This has ripple effects. And at this time, when the president is rallying his base, we need to call it out, not just say it's a racist statement, but everyone in there who is embracing it, are they racist? If they continue to say this and hold on to it, like they said the words, like the president said the words, S-whole nations, talking about Black, Haitian, and African countries, it's racist. It is racist.
Jamie, you have some new reporting. Tell us about this, about how Republicans are reacting to the president's rally behind the scenes. What are they saying?
You know, I think what we just saw is actually going to make the reporting I'm about to say underscore the problem here, because what we've seen today reflects right back to what happened on Saturday night. My phone blew up Saturday and Sunday at the rally, not just because they were empty seats, and not just because these were senior Republican officials, longtime hardcore supporters, fundraisers, big donors, who said that having the rally inside was a mistake. But they went on to talk about a lack of leadership. And what I'm hearing, and I just think what we saw at the White House just now from the podium, we're going to hear this again, is Trump fatigue from long-time supporters, from big donors. I just want to read to you direct quotes. And these are people who have never said things like this to me before on background. One longtime big donor said, quote, "People are questioning whether they can vote for him who have never questioned voting for him before." Another said, "I'm a third-generation hardcore Republican, but how can I vote for this guy? He hasn't handled the pandemic like a leader. Why isn't he wearing a mask? How big a deal is that?" There is, look, we have a ways to go before November, and just because there were empty seats at the rally doesn't mean that people weren't watching him on TV or may go out and vote for him. But what I've heard in the last 48 hours is something that I haven't heard before. And that is people who may not be willing to vote for Joe Biden, but they do not want to vote for Donald Trump.